In British politics, leadership challenges are never far away for a prime minister riding on a landslide victory. Since Labour's 2024 election win, Sir Keir Starmer has projected a veneer of dominance. Yet beneath that surface, rumblings of dissent, policy tensions, ideological fault lines, and personal rivalries have continued to test his grip on the Labour Party. Recent events ranging from Islamist-linked unrest, pro-Palestinian protests, cabinet dissent, and shifting public opinion offer a useful lens to assess whether Starmer has truly neutralized any serious leadership threat or simply delayed the next round of internal content. In this article, I examine the evidence for and against the proposition that Starmer has successfully seen off a credible threat, analyzing one internal party dynamics to public opinion and electoral climate, three current flashpoints, notably protests and security, and for future vulnerabilities. 1. Internal party dynamics, stability or suppressed dissent. A leadership rival scuttlebutt and whisper campaigns from the outset. Few expected a smooth ride. Within months of assuming premiership, murmurs appeared of backbench frustration and ambition. For example, Andy Burnham, mayor of Greater Manchester, has publicly criticized the leadership's style, accusing Starmer of running Labour under a climate of fear. The Sun, while Burnham has not yet launched a formal leadership campaign, his public comments suggest that some within Labour view Starmer as overly centralizing or lacking political flexibility. Positioning may be partly out-left-oriented critiques to influence policy, but as long as such figures stay on the sidelines, Starmer can argue they are not contenders. Another rumored internal rival is unidentified MPs or senior figures who quietly probe support in private. Media outlets have reported that Starmer has dismissed a leadership threat after a rival stoked talk of a challenge. Yahoo! This suggests Starmer and his inner circle remain vigilant to whispers of discontent. The fact that such threats are still described as rumor rather than active campaigns may itself signal control, cabinet cohesion, and discipline. One of the strongest defenses against a leadership challenge is internal discipline. Starmer appears to have consolidated loyalty in key ministerial posts, aligning his cabinet around a relatively coherent narrative of patriotic renewal, pragmatism, and managed reforms. Financial Times +2 AP News +2 dissent within the cabinet seems muted, though not absent, especially on issues like Palestine recognition, immigration, and the balance between civil liberties and security. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmoud has been particularly vocal. She has framed pro-Palestinian protests following the Manchester synagogue attack as fundamentally un-British, calling on activists to step back. Financial Times +for Sky News +for Mahmoud's language is strong, arguably stronger than the Prime Minister's tone, and in some ways pushes Starmer into tighter rhetorical positions. That said, she has not publicly broken with the government or expressed direct leadership ambition, at least not yet. Additionally, the recent resignation by Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner on the 5th of September 2025 over stamp duty underpayment issues, while not a direct challenge, opens a vacuum in party internal representation that could, in time, become a source of friction. Wikipedia, whoever becomes the new deputy leader, may play a role in shaping internal pressure on Starmer's direction. See factions, ideological balance. And the left flank. One of the longer-term threats to Starmer's dominance comes from factional realignment. His project has been to anchor Labour in the center, retaining credibility with middle voters while suppressing the more radical left. That balancing act invites tensions. Some leftists feel underrepresented or morally sidelined, especially on issues like Gaza, inequality, and civil liberties. During the Gaza war, Labour under Starmer faced internal rebellion. 56 Labour MPs defied a three-line whip in 2023 over a ceasefire motion. Wikipedia, the disputes over Israel, Palestine remain emotionally potent, especially among Muslim MPs and activists who feel the leadership is insufficiently vocal about Palestinian suffering. Wikipedia +1 if the leadership is perceived as increasingly technocratic and detached. A left-wing candidate in a future leadership contest might tap into that disaffection. For now, Starmer seems to have held the center ground, but the friction is still there. D. Ritual challenges versus credible threats in Westminster politics. Vocal criticism is not unusual. It does not always crystallize into a formal leadership contest. Starmer benefits from the fact that many dissenters are not yet prepared to risk party rupture. The question is whether any challenger has enough momentum, backers, and legitimacy to mount a credible bid. Thus far, media reports and internal leaks suggest threats are more whispered than acted upon. In that sense, yes, Starmer has so far seen them off, but that is not the same as total elimination. The test will come when electoral or policy stress intensifies. 2. Public opinion, electoral climate, and external pressure. Popularity trends and polling. Starmer entered office with a commanding parliamentary majority. However, governing is harder than campaigning. Recent reports showed declining approval ratings as inflation, cost of living, and economic underperformance bite. AP News +2, Financial Times +2 at Labour's 2025 conference. Starmer emphasized the need to reposition as a patriotic party to stem drift toward Reform UK, Financial Times +2 AP News. Plus to that rhetorical pivot suggests he senses public anxiety about immigration, division, and national identity, which are areas where rivals can gain traction. If Starmer's personal ratings fall further as relative to charismatic challengers, then internal critics might see an OPENINGB opposition from Reform UK Conservatives and fringe parties, one of the external pressures on Labour and, by extension, on Starmer's the rise of Nigel Farage's Reform UK. Though Reform holds few seats, its popular messaging on immigration and identity politics has disrupted the center ground narrative. Starmer has publicly accused Farage of trying to divide Britain. AP News +1 Labour's positioning thus becomes more vulnerable. If Reform eats into traditional Labour support, internal critics could argue that Starmer's program isn't resonating. In that sense, an external threat can catalyze internal dissent. See Greece's security and protest events surrounding the Manchester synagogue attack have created acute challenges for Starmer's leadership. A terrorist attack on Yom Kippur left 2 people dead, and the government response, including policing, security, and messaging, became a national focus. Sky News +5, Financial Times +5, The Guardian +5 Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood urged protests against the ban on Palestine action to be cancelled in the wake of the attack. Financial Times, meanwhile, organizers insisted their peaceful protest was vital, rejecting cancellation. Financial Times +1 Mahmood condemned protests as fundamentally un-British in remarks widely reported. Sky News +2, Starmer himself walked a tightrope condemning anti-Semitism and expressing solidarity with Jewish communities, while also acknowledging legitimate concern over suffering in Gaza. The Guardian +2, Financial Times +2. These events place Starmer under pressure. Policing, civil liberties, community safety, and national cohesion become litmus tests. If any misstep is perceived as weakness, internal critics might resurrect calls for alternatives. In sum, while Starmer has deflected immediate threats, ongoing crises like security or protests remain battlegrounds, where his leadership will be judged. 3. Has he successfully neutralized the threat? To call a leadership threat successfully seen off, one would expect more than silence. One would expect a consolidation of authority, minimal active dissent, and confidence that future challenges will be manageable. Here is how Starmer measures up. Evidence in favor: no active challenger milestone so far. No prominent MP or figure has formally declared leadership ambition. That suggests Starmer's dominance or his deterrence is strong enough to dissuade challengers from stepping forward. Public dismissal of rumors: Starmer has publicly brushed off rumors of leadership threats, signaling that he treats them as par for the parliamentary course, not existential risks. Yahoo! By consistently projecting confidence, he raises the bar for challengers. Cabinet alignment: so far, despite policy disagreements, the cabinet has not fractured. Ministers like Mahmoud operate within bounds and reinforce the government's messaging even when pushing the envelope. That suggests internal discipline largely holds narrative control and strategic framing. Starmer's pivot to patriotic renewal, his framing of Reform UK as a divisive force, and his emphasis on unity suggests he is trying to preempt ideological splits. Financial Times +1. By defining the narrative, he competes not just on policy but on national sentiment. Weakness of potential rivals: Burnham's critiques, while public haven't coalesced into a campaign or coalition of dissent, other potential rivals remain marginal or insufficiently organized. Evidence against underlying fissures still exists: discontent over Palestine, immigration, civil liberties, and economic policy persists. These are not peripheral issues, they resonate deeply among party activists and MPs. The fact that the left flank has not been fully quieted suggests fragility. Pressure on the big tent. Labour's strategy of holding together a coalition that spans the center-left and leans toward Moderate populism on issues such as immigration and national identity is inherently fragile. Should this balancing act falter at the ballot box, the leadership will find itself vulnerable. Crisis vulnerability incidents like the Manchester synagogue attack and the fallout from pro-Palestinian demonstrations illustrate how crises can destabilize leadership. A response judged too lenient, too heavy-handed, or tone-deaf could prompt calls for accountability. The next major crisis could provide the spark for a leadership challenge. Deputy leadership vacancy. Rayner's resignation has opened up a deputy leadership contest that could become a focal point for factional realignment within labor. Depending on who emerges victorious, the deputy role could either reinforce Starmer's authority or provide a rival power base. Erosion of public support. Starmer's approval ratings continue to fall, or if parties like Reform UK gain traction, discontent within Labour could harden into organised dissent. Electoral setbacks may convince restless MPs that a change in leadership is essential for survival. Conditional success in fending off threats and balance. Starmer has managed to keep serious rivals at bay, preserved internal discipline, and projected authority during moments of crisis. But successfully is a cautious term here. His position is far from impregnable. His leadership rests on his ability to navigate crises effectively, sustain electoral performance, and hold together Labour's wide ideological coalition. Future scenarios to watch: formal challenge emergence. A declared bid from figures like Andy Burnham or a candidate from the party's left would mark the true test of Starmer's authority. Watch for signs of quiet organizing, discreet polling of MPs, or early endorsements. Deputy leadership contest. The outcome of the deputy leadership race will be crucial. A left-leaning or factionally distinct deputy could serve as a platform for alternative leadership ambitions. Polling and by-election results. Underperformance in by-elections or local elections would embolden critics. Strong advances by Reform UK in particular would intensify calls for Labour to change course. Developments in Gaza and the Middle East. The ongoing Gaza conflict continues to stir activism and strong emotions. If Starmer's line is seen as insufficiently robust, or if protest restrictions are viewed as excessive, divisions inside Labour could deepen. Security, terrorism, and civil liberties. Future terror incidents or mass protests could force the government into divisive choices between prioritizing security and safeguarding civil liberties. Missteps could fracture support. Cabinet revolt or leaks. Even absent a formal challenge, a wave of leaks, resignations, or outspoken criticism from senior ministers would signal a weakening grip. Maintaining cabinet loyalty and cohesion will be critical. Factional alliances and donor dynamics. Shifts in union backing, donor support, or grassroots organization could reshape internal power balances. A challenger who can consolidate these forces may pose a genuine threat. Conclusions. Is Keir Starmer successfully neutralized a leadership threat? For now, yes, but only conditionally. He has weathered the immediate turbulence, kept rivals on the sidelines, and set the party's direction. Yet the underlying tensions remain unresolved. His future depends on whether he can manage crises with political dexterity, deliver on public expectations, and maintain the delicate unity of Labour's big tent. The next months, particularly the deputy leadership election and upcoming electoral tests, will reveal whether Starmer's hold is durable or whether a challenger emerges to put his authority to the test. Asterisk.